Welcome to the first episode of This Movie Got Me, my new podcast, where I'm going to be talking about movies that I connected with. Sometimes that means we'll be talking about a movie that's new, like we are today, and sometimes that means we're going to be talking about a movie from the past, a movie that I resonated with. And I don't know about you, but I just see so much like rage bait out there in the movie world where we're always talking about this movie is the worst, or, you know, the box office is terrible for this movie, our movie theater's dead. I get that. I've been caught up in that before, but I want this podcast to be an oasis for myself to talk about movies that I liked, or movies that, you know, resonated with me, and also an oasis for you to have a place where we could have some of these conversations about these movies and not have to worry about, you know, how people are going to react and, you know, whatever the hot topic or controversy around a certain movie is. Like, sometimes we'll deal with it. If there's a movie that, you know, got me in that, like, I got really mad at, I probably will talk about it. But I'll do it in a way that at least we could have conversations about. So even if you don't like that movie, or you don't like my take about a movie, conversations are welcome. So subscribe to the podcast. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. And, you know, we're going to put this out in audio format. We're also going to be putting it out in a video. And, you know, I do take the video seriously. So maybe check that out if you're interested in that aspect of it. Today, we are talking about, on the first episode of This Movie Got Me, we're talking about Toy Story 5.
Hi!
What the?
Oh, what is that?
Devices! Tablets! Tap, 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 tap! Hey, Michael Chippendales, hands off!
We're gonna need backup. No way.
Your toys are out of here.
Oh, the tapping!
You're muted.
Tap, 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 tap!
I get the tap!
I can't! It's not responded! I have plastic fingers!
Disney and Pixar's Toy Story 5, rated PG.
So the whole premise of this podcast is to say this movie got me and then explain how it got me. And so Toy Story 5 got me nostalgic. And I can't help it. You know, that's an easy thing to do. There's a reason why Disney made this movie. They knew it would make $1 billion. It crushed it this weekend. It's going to continue to crush the box office. They knew what they were doing. But while it's easy, it also can be complicated because you're trying to be nostalgic, but you also have to live in the same world that you've already built. So for Toy Story 4, for example, I don't think that worked very well. And I could show you why that didn't work very well through the story of our, you know, watching of it. Me and my family, we loved this franchise. We took everybody to go see the movie. My middle son is obsessed with Buzz Lightyear. And when I say obsessed with Buzz, you don't understand. There are months where he would just only wear his Buzz Lightyear costume outside. He has dozens and dozens of Buzz Lightyears. He is a Buzz Lightyear kid. Actually, when I ask him if he's sure about something, you know what he says? I'm always sure. I'm Buzz Lightyear. That's what he does. So he loves this character. He came out of the movie theater in his Buzz Lightyear costume, sobbing. And the phrase that's buried in my dad mind is, "Don't go, Woody." He just kept on saying it over and over again. It was, yes, the characters. Yes, there was nostalgia with the characters, but they didn't keep the spirit of the characters. They didn't live in the world of those characters. They went farther away. They focused on a Fork. While, you know, Forky is funny because Tony Hale is funny, and the movie isn't a bad movie. It just didn't capture the same magic as that original trilogy. And so Toy Story 5, while it's easy to be like, oh, of course it would be nostalgic. You have Woody and Buzz and the characters, and so you're going to be nostalgic for those things. I don't feel like we were nostalgic about Toy Story 4. Maybe some people are, but for me personally, not so much, and definitely not for my kids. But Toy Story 5, I feel like it lived in that world of Toy Story. There was more going on. It didn't feel so separate and trying to build something new, which, you know, I granted, it's very easy to do that once you've already gotten past that trilogy and you've had a movie to kind of sit there and be like the building block for what comes next. I understand that. but at the same time, it just felt like a Toy Story movie this time. It felt like those characters were real characters. Now, the overall story, of course, and I'm not going to be like being like, oh, it's spoiler free and then spoilers. I'm assuming that you saw the movie. That's what this podcast is going to be, just talking my way through my experience of this movie and maybe hearing about yours in comments or emails. We'll talk about that later on. But this movie, as it was going through, it became very clear that this got it. And you could see that from not the opening, because they opened a little bit different than a normal Toy Story movie. I was totally hooked on these Buzz Lightyears. I got to be honest with you. I thought it was hilarious. I love like them not even understanding and just being like, Star Command, and like kind of remembering. It kind of felt like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I think is what they were trying to go for. It's just like that revelation of knowledge, like we see there with the monolith. But it just, I love that. But that wasn't a normal way to open a Toy Story movie. But as soon as they got into the wedding dream sequence that we saw in the trailers, I was like, this movie gets it. This is how you do it. This imagination, this wonder, this being able to use the toys and be silly. And the characters are, fun to see them interacting and being a little bit different. And we got Buzz Lightyear, being like, I like Jessie and I want to tell her how I feel, and like using like that wedding as like the buildup for his character throughout the rest of the movie. I thought that was really smart and a fun way to do it without having so much exposition at the beginning. And so like you start off with those characters and it's so fun. It's such a great beginning, but then it quickly becomes this thing of like, it's Bonnie versus these kids. And at first it's the twins. And as a dad, I have seen my kids struggle with making friends. Thankfully, all of them have been pretty, out there kids and been able to go out there and make some friends. But it's not easy. I've watched it from afar. It's not the same as it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, you just had something, an N64. You got an N64, that kid wants to play N64, you ask him, hey, do you want to come play Smash Brothers with me? And like friendship immediately. Or you see someone playing with Star Wars action figures. That was a huge thing in my neighborhood. Watching these kids play with Star Wars action figures or Jurassic Park figures. You saw them playing with things or using something, or you heard about it and you were like, let me be a part of that. And like that ability to not just like know that someone likes something, but to join in immediately through play of action figures or video games, like that was a huge part of making friends as a kid. It's not that way anymore. So much of what kids are into these days are individual. And this movie got that. And that's something that Toy Story always does. It takes something that, yes, the story is about dumb plastic toys and their fight for power and weird jealousy throughout. Like it's kind of like bizarre when you think about it. The creativity, it's insane. But they use that to tell a story. But in the backdrop, it's always the theme of how does this tell us what is going on with the child? It's beautiful. And it's a special franchise, and this movie did that. It had the background be this idea of, how do you make friends and connect with people, and probably even beyond like the idea of friendship, but just connection with other human beings. How do you do that when everyone is on their own? And I know that the conversation is going to be, tablets, because that's what they use. They use tablets to communicate that. After this dream sequence, you see how hard it is for Bonnie to be able to connect with the kids across the street because they're not wanting to join in. Like there's nothing in them that sees the toys and sees that as an opportunity to connect. They don't see the world that way. And so Jessie takes it upon herself, and I really enjoyed her being like the main character of this movie. It definitely was. Buzz was a side character. Woody, I would even say that he's kind of a cameo in this movie, which I didn't necessarily enjoy, because to me, he's the central figure of this franchise, and it felt a little weird just from a narrative standpoint to have him be like kind of barely in the movie. And then there was conversation about how he wasn't even in the first draft, and they kind of wrote him in because they felt like they needed him. And it's just like, that's kind of strange. But I did enjoy that Jessie was at the forefront of this movie. And as like the leader, the sheriff of the toys, she takes it upon herself to go and confront these twins and figure out a way for them to play with Bonnie, because she could see that Bonnie needed that connection. And so eventually she finds herself on the roof after hearing from these other toys that, you know, tech is coming for their souls, you know, like the age of toys is over, which was a little on the nose, but also, you know, kind of funny, you know, like them just like these depressed toys who've been outside for whoever knows how long. And like, so Jessie goes onto the roof and looks around the neighborhood. And it's one of the saddest scenes I've seen in a movie in a long time, because she looked all across this neighborhood, and in every house there was either a TV on with people just kind of glued to it, or kids playing with a computer or some kind of tablet. And like from that, you can see they're not being creative. All right, this isn't them trying to make something on their own, or, you know, enjoying some art or something. It's them just kind of brainlessly scrolling, brainlessly, you know, just absorbing the content and not interacting with anyone. And she just kind of looks across, and we see all these dark houses with just the lit up screens. And that was so impactful to understand, like, that this problem, you know, if you're a parent, you know, it's not just your kids, right, that are facing this. And we've seen it, right? If you have tablets in your house and you let your kid, for us, we have times, you know, that we have attached to it. We try not to give it to them too often. We want them to go outside and play and interact with other kids in the neighborhood and, you know, make friends and be, you know, normal human beings. But sometimes we do give them the tablets. And so like we have certain times for that. But they look around and it just seems like that's all they do. They're just tablet kids, and they're glued into these things. And it's so sad because they're not connecting with anyone. Each one of these screens, they're isolated. And I think that is just something that is such a huge deal right now, because we've seen what tablets have done to our kids if you give it to them too much. You know, because these kids, they enjoy them, right? Like, tablets are fun. The internet is a fun place. YouTube is a fun place. You know, all the places where these kids go, TikTok is fun to scroll. It's why we do it, you know, right before bed. We hop on Instagram and watch all the reels and all of that, right? So like, we get why they do it, but because of their age, because of them not knowing how to limit themselves, and because it's easy too, we can see how that has a problem. If, as a parent, you've probably noticed that if you've given your kid too much screen time, everybody can kind of tell that it has an effect, and you can see the effect all across the neighborhood. And that just builds like such a great backdrop of, it's not just technology. And that's really what this movie is about, trying to say that, yes, technology can be a temptation to give in to these impulses, but it's more about fear and more about isolating ourselves, becoming, you know, just a little bit, I wouldn't say lazy, but just not as outgoing as we should be. And taking the easy road of just, well, I'll just go on my screen. We can see that Bonnie, she doesn't want to go talk to the twins. She has a hard time talking to the girls in person, but when she's on the tablet, all of a sudden, she's a little bit more brave. And we know how that is. People say things online that they would never say to someone in person. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, a lot of times bad. You look at the comments, like it can get pretty bad out there. And I think that was a really cool way of showing the problem in society. And while I do think that it's a little too big for a kid's movie, this movie is a little too dark, in my opinion. Toy Story 3 has its moments where it's like, oh no, the toys are going to die in this fire, or Andy giving away his toys. It's really, impactful and emotional. This, I felt like, was a little just too dark. It's just a little too much, too big of an idea for the characters that we have right now. And it wasn't as much fun as I think it should be. Now, I think a lot of the fun that they were going for was through this side quest of all the Buzz Lightyears. And like I said, it really worked for me. I thought it was really funny. I was laughing really hard in the movie theater. All of that worked. The rivalry between Buzz and Woody, I thought, was also helpful to kind of bring up the joy factor in this movie. I think even Mr. Potato Head said that it's good to see them fighting again. That's how I felt while I was sitting there. But the main focus is Jessie. And so you got the backdrop of like isolation and friendship, but you also have Jessie kind of reckoning with this idea of being like the sheriff and trying to take care of her kid and not being able to, and still dealing with the effects of her being abandoned by her owner. And overall, I thought that was fine. I didn't feel like it was too special, but I did feel like it was satisfactory. It worked in this movie. I didn't feel like super connected to Jessie as a character, but and to be honest, I kind of wanted more Woody, but also a little bit more Buzz. It's kind of weird that we went right from Woody's the main character to now Buzz is again is he always just the B character? Because I feel like, Bonnie being a girl and Buzz being like this idea of like the perfect boy toy. That could have had something, but they went for this idea of Jessie still dealing with this abandonment, and it worked. You had like the idea of almost prejudice dealt with in this movie. Again, this movie deals with some pretty big ideas, maybe a little too big. And this one kind of worked, but you basically have her being like anti-tech. She's against Lily Pad. Lily Pad is the enemy. She doesn't see a way to be able to work with Lily Pad. And so all of tech is bad to Jessie. And so then you have her finding her way back to the farmhouse that we saw in Toy Story 2, where her owner, Emily, was with her and abandoned her there to be donated, which is interesting that she saw being donated as abandonment when it was really a girl growing up. You can kind of see like how things get distorted a little bit when people are hurt, maybe in this movie. But then you have Blaze, this character that we're going to end up seeing become friends with Bonnie, and all of that was adorable. But you get introduced to the funniest character in this movie. Yeah, you got the Buzz stuff going on with the different light years. You got the rivalry of Woody and Buzz, but a lot of the humor is just Conan O'Brien being Conan O'Brien. Like that toy is Conan O'Brien. like just the silliness, the zaniness. I really loved his low on batteries, thing of kind of seeming like he was drunk, which like it's kind of funny that you did that in a kid's movie, but this franchise has always done that. You remember like the Barbies thing with Prospector Pete in Toy Story 2? Like there's some adult humor in this franchise. franchise. And I felt like there was quite a bit of that with Conan's character of Smarty Pants. But I love the dynamic between those two because they're both at odds. They kind of need each other to be able to get out of this house and get Jesse back, with Bonnie, and Smarty Pants to be relevant in Blaze's life. And they basically become friends. And, that's kind of like the whole picture, right? Is connection. And Jesse finds a way to connect with this technology. And then it becomes an idea of, okay, well, just because you are part of this doesn't make you part of everything bad with it. And that there could be good uses for this technology in Bonnie's life and in Blaze's life. And, it's kind of a simplistic way to look at prejudice, but it worked mostly. So that was fun. But toward the end is where it really gets emotional, because you have like these breakdowns and you get this bullying from, on the lily pad. Bonnie starts getting these messages as like, the toy is basically uploading this picture and saying, I've lost my toy. And they're like, oh my goodness, you still play with toys? As soon as I saw that message come in from that little girl and calling her a baby, I got so angry. My dad rage came out. And I was just like, who is this little girl? I'm going to talk to her parents. Like, where are the parents? Like, are they even seeing this stuff? But yeah, it made me furious. This movie got me furious with that. And you hear this breakdown of this child, this cute little girl just being like, why can't I make friends? And it's just so sad because as a parent, sometimes it gets that way and you can't do anything. You can't force someone to be friends with your kid or force them to do the right thing when they hurt your kid. That's the other parent's job. And so you're just there for your kid. And like you have basically an Inside Out moment where the family just hugs Bonnie and, then go get ice cream and stuff like that. So it's pretty emotional toward the end. And I would say that's when it felt the heaviest for me. I would say it's like, people are like, oh, I cried in the theater over and over again. Like I got like a little, misty eyed maybe. But I didn't feel like, it was that same level of, emotion as like Toy Story 3 or something like that. And like, if you felt that, cool. I didn't quite feel that. So like, I was just, I'm rooting for this little girl and I'm rooting for Blaze. I'm rooting for this little friendship. And, eventually, through all this chaos of the Buzz Lightyears getting this upgrade, which I've seen some people, really throw shade on, like this idea of an upgrade, that's the solution in this movie is them getting this upgrade and getting the drone thing. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a baller moment. It was probably my favorite moment other than the post-credit scene. That I was just like, this is hilarious and awesome. They just kind of like get this update and they all start getting the colors going on their faceplate thing. And I just thought that was super effective throughout the entirety of the movie, but it really worked there to build up this anticipation of how are they going to be able to help, Jesse get to Bonnie and be able to unite Bonnie and Blaze and have this friendship and, make sure that their kid isn't isolated anymore. And it's through this upgrade and then boom, the drone wings like fly out. And I just thought that was awesome. It was one of those moments that you're like, this is a movie. This is a movie moment that like, it's a Toy Story movie. It's not the most action packed thing. It's not going to be something that has like visuals that are going to amaze you other than like the fact that everything is animated. But that moment I felt like was one of those, kind of moments in a movie. And so it really worked for me. And you basically have like the kiss of Buzz and Jesse already knew, that Buzz was all about her. And you could see that like all the way back in Toy Story 2. Like you could see that clearly there. So like, it's weird how, these movies kind of do that. Like Toy Story 1, you basically have Woody and Bo making out. Like that was a thing back then. And then they act like, oh, are they going to get together in Toy Story 4? Maybe. Okay. But they do that again, and it's cute and it's fun. And he pops his, leg out when they kiss, and it's just like Ken. And it all concludes with Bonnie and Blaze having their moment. Blaze comes over and she's being outgoing. She's trying. She brought Jessie over like she is ready to make a friend. And you could just see that Bonnie is just a little too scared. Just a little too scared for a little while. And then all of a sudden, she reaches out to Blaze, and Blaze makes the joke with her hair about the beard, which had everyone in my theater laughing their face off. It was such a funny moment. And you see right then that these two people are so like-minded that they will be friends, and their toys were right. These two need to connect. They're going to be buddies. And I love that right away. It's just like, do you want to play? And everyone is excited to see it. The parents are excited to see it. And all of a sudden the creativity comes back, and the imagination that got lost in the screens and in the isolation come back. And these two use technology, which I thought was beautiful too, by the way. Like you have the Smarty Pants character being used in imagination earlier, but then Lilypad is playing like the wedding music. And that's part of their imagination. And they take the picture with the lily pad, showing that like technology can be a part of our creativity and a way for us to connect with each other and is useful. But when we abuse it and when we take the easy road with just isolation and focusing on our own individual algorithms and doom scrolling and all of that we can get sidetracked from reality and lose sight of connection with other human beings. And I thought it was a beautiful way to show that, yes, they're imaginative and they're playing and they're connecting, but they're also using technology as a way for them to connect as well. And then you have like the post-credit scene, which to me was so funny. The buzzes just, coming from the heavens, descending in this playground. And, the teacher there taking one and being like, hey, stop it. And then takes one and hides it behind their back. Perfect. That would be me. I would be like, oh yeah, I'm definitely grabbing one. One kid would be so sad that they didn't get one. I'm like, don't come around me. And then Zurg shows up and they're like, so like this movie was good. There are definitely flaws in it. It's still a little bit too long. They cut it down. It's not as long as Toy Story 4, but I felt it was a little too long, and I felt like it was a little too dark. I wish that it had just a little bit more humor and a little bit more adventure. Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, we have a lot of locations. And in this movie, you basically have Bonnie's house, you have Blaze's house, and that's it pretty much. Like we get little snippets of other things, but like Toy Story 1, you're going around the whole town. You're going to Pizza Planet. You're going to all these fun places. Toy Story 2, you're going to Al's barn, like Toy Story 3, all over the neighborhood. Like you dealt with a lot. And I feel like this movie could have, done with a little bit more adventure, a little bit more fun. And while like I'm happy with the themes that they talked about and the way that they handled the themes, I just wish that there was a little bit more levity to kind of balance it out. But I felt like those characters that I loved were there, even if there wasn't that much of them. Kind of weird to have Key and Peele's characters not even talk. Duke Kaboom just coming in and saying a few lines. It very much felt like, all right, we got a few lines from Keanu Reeves, so like we can have him be in this, or a few of these other characters. Everyone gets put in the box pretty early. All the friends that we love, Slinky Dog and all of them, they're just in the box and just have a few lines. I get it. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of things you got to do in this movie, but I do wish that they had a little bit more time with those characters. Maybe everyone could have gone on the adventure rather than just Jessie. And I get that you want to focus on Jessie, but I just wish that there was a little bit more winsomeness in this movie. But overall, like, these characters are those characters that were in the first 3 movies. And I felt like a little bit more well-rounded than in Toy Story 4. So I was super nostalgic watching this movie. I really enjoyed it. As far as a rating, I'd probably give it about 3.5 stars. I think that's what I did on Letterboxd. It's not a perfect film. It's definitely not upper tier. I would say it's probably the 4th best of the 5 Toy Story movies, but that's a really high bar for the first trilogy. So like 3.5 stars, I think, is pretty fair and pretty good. And definitely a movie that I'd recommend to anybody, and a movie that I want to watch again, and a movie that I connected with. And, I want to see more of what they can do. I want a Buzz Lightyear movie. I'm telling you, like, Buzz Lightyear needs to be the focus of the next movie. Just, now you got Blaze and Bonnie, you got 2 girls. What does a boy toy do with that? Like there's got to be something you could do with Buzz and have him be the focus, and a little bit more well-rounded as a character, rather than just leaning on that trope of he doesn't know he's a toy. I thought it wouldn't work when it first started happening, but it was just really funny to me the entire time how they used the other Buzz Lightyears. So I guess they can make that trope work again and again, because it keeps on working for me. The Spanish mode in Toy Story 3, that worked too. The last one, Toy Story 4, where he's just like using like his conscience basically with the buttons, not as fun. But this movie, they got it right. So it's a worthy addition to a beloved franchise. And next time we'll talk about another movie that I connected with, but I want to know how you connected with Toy Story 5. Let me know that in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Maybe even think about subscribing while you're here. But you could also hit me up on Instagram at MovieMud. That is the name right now. Maybe I'll stick with it. Maybe I'll name it after the podcast. We'll see how this goes. But I thank you for watching the first episode of This Movie Got Me. And next time we'll talk about another movie that got me in a different way. Maybe good, maybe bad. We'll see. Thanks for watching. Bye.